We have to be a little less soft in our life and not let things affect us as much. We have to go back to being a little bit tougher and not be influenced as easily as, oh, did you? Oh, yeah, so what? Like, so what? Somebody said something. Big deal.
Do you think political correctness has gone like too far in a way?
Like in a Ferrari and it's flying by.
That's the voice of Neil Lumsden. He's a 4-time Grey Cup champion, 3 as a player and 1 as a GM. He's in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in the class of 2014. We covered a ton of ground in this interview. Neil's an all-around great guy. I really enjoyed this chat, and I hope you do too. This is my conversation with Neil Lumsden. All right, so Neil Lumsden, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure given how we're going to do this.
Yes.
I've got a cold one in front of me. I got a little bit of water. I've got,
This is my first podcast with beer, so this could be a new thing. We'll see how it goes.
I don't think it's a bad idea.
I think it's a great idea. Because, well, it's my idea. So, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time, and it's great to see you in person. It's been
a long time.
I remember the first time I met you and saw you. It was 25 years ago this summer, and it was like less than a block away from here. So like the location that we're in today was not by accident, at Jackson Square where the Hamilton Ticats office was. So I think, was it like VP of marketing or GM, or what was the role that you were in there?
It was general manager, director of business operations, and whatever else.
Jack of all trades.
David and George, the owners, didn't want to do. And governor at the CFL level. And it was, as you know, it wasn't a huge staff, but it was a very effective and a passionate staff.
It was, and in many ways, I guess, saved the team. Like, so the story is, I graduated from journalism school in April or May of 1994, and wanted to get desperately into sports communications or sports journalism or something along those lines. So I sent letters to every outlet and TSNs. And so if you think about 1993, the Raptors had just been created. And so all the fanfare was around them. The Blue Jays had just won the World Series. The Leafs had almost gone to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Doug Gilmour face-slashing incident would have beat the Habs, I'm guessing, probably. Yeah. And the Argos had just won a Grey Cup. So all of those teams were just firing on all cylinders and everybody's favorite. And they all basically told me to, go bleep yourself, right? So the one letter that I got a response from was to the Ticats. And so John Michalak, this is before email, but he calls up my parents, because that was the number on my resume, and he says, is Warren Weeks there? And so I wrote this very ballsy, like I would be I'm mortified to send out this cover letter today, but I was desperate to get a job. So it was like, I will increase your ticket sales 10%, like all this stuff. Do you really?
Yeah.
How do you remember that?
I remember talking to him about it.
Really? How did that go? I've never heard this.
Well, it was just, at the time, everyone looks at sport in hunks of 5 years in a lot of ways. Not only win-loss records and what have you done for me lately, but structure.
Right.
And, when you look at the Ticats now, what happened when Bob Young took over, it's a little bit more than 5 years. But, they're very heavy on the administrative side of things. They've got resources. We didn't have resources. We had a line of credit. And John was very passionate about the football team and this city and making it go. And Roger Uketti, who sat on the board, and Ron Foxcroft. Yeah. And it was an interesting structure and setup. So we were always looking for help. And when I first got there, I joke at times, if I knew what I was walking into was because I moved from Ottawa at the time, I probably wouldn't have come. But he did a great job, painted a great picture. I knew where he wanted to go. I had been involved in sports in Ottawa with at that time the Rough Riders. Had a pretty good opportunity there with the Glebermans. And they said, well, we'd like you, the CFL called me and said, well, Hamilton needs help. You've done some great things there. We'd like you to come back for a lot of different reasons. So I said, if I had known what I knew when I walked in, and after the first couple of weeks, I would have gone, Jesus, are you kidding me? This is crazy. But I've always suggested one of my soft points or soft spots is challenges. I love to get challenged, and sometimes it's a detriment. It takes longer, but for the most part, in that case, I was away from my family a bit.
Yeah.
Because
Where
they were
was your
still in
family?
Ottawa.
Oh,
They were
okay.
still in Ottawa, and I
Right,
wanted to
right.
make sure this thing was going to
Yeah,
go.
good.
So I was here for about a year on my own, going back and forth.
You don't want to disrupt everybody in case it's temporary.
That's right. So when we're sitting down, and I absolutely remember, and he calls me in and said, "What do you think?" And we need help in this, and hey, sounds great to me. I mean,
Jeez.
we can get bright people involved with what we are trying to
Not
do
sure how
here.
bright I was, but
Well, we'll decide that.
that's
We made the call at the time, so don't go back.
Yeah. So I remember, and I was in Sault Ste. Marie at the time,
Yeah.
and thinking I'm going to be living with my parents forever, and borrowed the family car, drove down to Hamilton, had my kind of interview, I guess, and he said, "Okay, you're hired. I can't pay you anything. I will give you."
He said that to everybody, by the way.
Well, not surprised, because I got to sit in on some of the meetings with the bankers.
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a sec, but he says, "I can't pay you, but I will give you 2 tickets to every home game. You will have access to me and my team. You can kind of see the inner workings." And I had salary cap information, and he threatened castration if it ever got out. Like, that's one of the... So he gave you much more valuable than whatever money you would have made that summer. And he said, "And I will mentor you, like 30 minutes at the end of every week." We'd sit down on Friday afternoon, and he'd give me the gears about business and life
Sure.
and meetings and literally stuff I think about almost every week.
And he came from the Royal Bank.
He did, yeah.
An executive at the Royal Bank.
Yeah, that's right. So I remember there was one time we had a meeting with 2 bankers, and they were trying to shut the team down. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in this meeting. I'm this kid with this kind of this weird felt blazer on or something, and he's like, just shut up, take notes, just sit there, don't say anything, just take notes. So I'm taking notes, and there's these 2 guys from the bank, and John's across the table, and he's absolutely running the meeting. And about 10 minutes in, one of them's like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And John's like, "He's my biographer, don't worry about it." And so that was the last that was said. But he could spin a yarn and tell a story,
He
but
sure
there
could.
was business sense behind it. And I think, in many ways, if there was someone else running that team at that time, and maybe it's not around anymore, it was really close.
No, I don't think there's any question. I mean, as things changed as we went on, but to me, there's no doubt that without his passion behind what he was doing, and not everything was right.
Right.
But at that point, you have to do things that might turn out not perfectly, because you have to do something. And he was. It was an interesting structure too. I mean, it was a not-for-profit. We had a board. On that board, I've given you a couple names.
Yeah.
The mayor was on it. The regional chair was on it. We had a line of credit that was, I never forget picking up a check from Canada Post for $130,000. I thought, hey, this is good, and that got our line down to a point where we wouldn't get the bank to call us, because the line was, I think, 750 or 100,000,
Yeah.
whatever it was, and that got us below. And I thought, so we live on the edge. We were really on the edge all the time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times, probably 5, 6, 7, I would not take a paycheck until later, till we got
Just
some
to,
funds in
float a little
make
bit.
to make
Yeah,
staff make sure
jeez.
staff got paid.
I didn't take one either.
That's right. Well, I eventually got mine. I want you to promise you that. But it was okay with me, and I didn't mind
Yeah,
that,
because
I understood.
you're into the cause.
Well, you're into not so much the cause, but you're certainly in passion about it. I mean, I've been a football guy for a long time, but you don't do it unless you see something, unless you see an opportunity. A 5'8", 135-pound guy can go to the gym all he wants. He's never probably going to be a professional player just because he hasn't been given that
Pinball
gift.
Clemens.
Well, but he wasn't 115 pounds.
He's
He was a little
5'6",
bit bigger.
I think.
Yeah, but 180 pounds and
true,
strong
true.
as a bull, right? So there's certain things that aren't going to happen, and we saw, and I saw that opportunity, and we had to have things go our way, and a lot didn't go our way. But when you've got Todd Crocker and Norm Miller, Don Edwards at the time, Ian Barnes, who was a peripheral, who was a supplier for us, who I've been doing business with since then.
Who was the guy with the beard, the ticket guy?
Oh, Matt Moreland?
Yeah.
Matt and Melanie Moreland
Yeah,
were
yeah.
spectacular.
Paula Anderchuk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
There was
had
one,
a group
Helen,
of-
was that the lady who ran the office, kind of?
Helen was
the mom.
my admin assistant,
Yeah,
but
she was
really,
great. She's like
and
a
we were-
character on a TV show.
Oh, well, she had to be.
Yeah.
And Pat before her.
Right.
And Pat used to call me every Christmas for years and years and years. Her and her husband moved out west.
I think that office could have been a TV show. If you look
Well,
at the shows that are on Netflix today, you know what I mean? Like, that could be a show.
Oh, sure. it was pretty funny. And we were in the bunker. We eventually moved down to the stadium, right? And I affectionately called it the bunker because there was hardly any windows and it was concrete block. I mean, your place could blow up around you. We'd be okay. But what a great and talented group of men and women that kept this going to save the team.
Yeah.
To allow David McDonald and George Grant to create enough value that those guys saw an opportunity to purchase the team.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And then ultimately, Bob Young comes in and sees enough value to purchase the team from those two. Or I think maybe they defaulted, and then there was a soft point in there. Then Bob Young came in.
Saw an opportunity, though.
Yeah, there's no question. Steve Milton and I were talking about after Donnie passed and Spencer, and it was a shock, and it's just. It was just his 60th birthday, I think, just came and went a couple days ago. But those are the people that I mentioned. They're the reason there's a football team.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no question about it.
You think they would have just moved it, shut it down?
I don't know. These days, as it is with the Alouettes, and it has been since I was a player, take that club over and then they run it, right? But doing things that hadn't been done before, doing things that were calculated that no one knew about, that we would give credit to other people. We were very strategic in what we did, even though we weren't big. And the key points is then that leadership that you and I were speaking about a little bit earlier. If you get the right leadership in place with the knowledge behind them and the understanding to how to bring people together, and then how that translates into winning, and getting Ron Lancaster was huge, because the strategy there was he was going to bring two key people because their contracts were running out at Edmonton. McManus and Flutie. And that's your foundation. The Hitchcocks and the Morellis of the world, Phil Brooks. There are so many great players on that team. The reason that we went to the Grey Cup in 98 and lost to Calgary, and then came back in 99 and beat them in Vancouver. So
were you still with the team at that time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like? To go in 7 years, 8 or 6 years, from brink of disaster to the Grey Cup. What was that like?
It was the plan. It was, to me, more than once I referenced my experience in Edmonton from the football perspective and why they were so good for so long. And it just doesn't happen more.
By accident,
There's a reason. You get the right people in place. We had a head coach in Hugh Campbell. We had a general manager in Norm Kimball that understood what it took, got the right people in place, and we had as a team, the players, we had a very unique relationship with the coach, and he knew we had our own police force. You couldn't be a bad person or a jerk, a selfish individual, and make it through training camp and be on the team. You just couldn't.
Right.
Because the guys, the group of sort of that police force, would weed them out and they'd be gone.
Yeah, that's like a cancer on a team.
And it happens like that. So knowing that and understanding and having the awareness around, you don't win 5 Grey Cups just by showing up, right? So I think that there's a formula there. There's a cultural piece that's so important that people have a hard time understanding and love to use that word, but they really don't know. They might know what it means, but they don't know how to get there necessarily. Those are the sorts of things, and that's what happened here in Hamilton. And a fraction of the people of what is in place now administratively. But from a football perspective, we were in the mindset that we'll play anywhere. It doesn't matter. I don't care. We'll play you, and we'll beat you. And that's what eventually Hamilton became.
Yeah.
And it was hard, and we all sacrificed something. But no one else could have done it but that group.
Do you know what's John up to these days? Do you keep in touch at all? Do
you know what? I haven't seen him
pretty low
in the
profile.
longest time. Yeah, I think. He used to live in Dundas. I thought they moved up north for a while, but a crazy son of a gun at times, and I didn't agree.
Irascible. That was the word the Globe and Mail would always use to describe him. The irascible John.
Yeah, I didn't agree with him all the time, but I tell you what, he was key locally, as Roger Uketti was, and I don't want to lose sight that Roger played a huge role in saving this football team and his own dough up. Everyone else worked hard, but he stood behind it and put his own money
That's very rare.
Yeah.
Usually they'll borrow.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Wow. I remember watching that game. There was the huge, I wasn't a big CFL fan before that. I'd watch the occasional game. when I started working for the team, and then having access to the games, and I think I was actually working for some of the halftime. They would have like Bell would have something, and I'd be like wheeling stuff out on the field or whatever. But I remember literally I was sleeping on a buddy's couch. I don't have 10 cents to my name. I'm in debt at this point, living on credit cards and generosity of friends, and then it's like, it's a game night and you're at Ivor Wynne Stadium and you're watching the sunset and there's this football game, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm the luckiest guy in the world right now. And it's like, I don't know if I've been happier since professionally. Like, I love what I do, but it was just like this magical time and to be around. Like, not to make it extra nostalgic, but just it felt very special to be there. Like, on those nights when those games are taking place, there's like an energy and a buzz, and it was just that outdoor stadium, so cool.
Well, and the fans were spectacular too, right?
Yeah.
And when they started coming back, and then they came back, and we got season tickets up to 14,000, which was part of that drive. There is a very large romantic piece in sport when things go well. There is they make movies about them.
Lots of them, yeah.
And what you experience is what a lot of us experienced after a game, that you haven't got a whole lot left to give from the business and the execution piece.
Yeah.
But you sit back and go, oh, it was all worth it. It was great, and you crack a beer and you move ahead and you can't wait to do it again. It's a little bit like a player when you sit in a locker room. You're motivated in a couple different things. If you've lost, you think to yourself, look, we've got to get better, and let's focus on how we are going to get better.
Right.
So you immediately get out of, if I'm sore, I've been beaten up, it doesn't, it's mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter, sort of thing. and when you get those people in a locker room that think that way, and the coaches, it's powerful. We had it in the front office. I had the same kind of thing in world cycling. I've been so lucky in my career to be around people that understood that it's okay. It's hard. If you want to be great, you want to be successful, it's hard.
Right.
And that's one of the things when I was at Brock for those 3.5 years, I worried about the students, especially the athletes, because parents don't let it be hard on them.
It's just the whole trophies for
not your fault.
everybody.
It's everything. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, not so much that. It's about if kids make a mistake, or somebody carries your hockey bag for you when you're a little younger. We got to make it easy. We don't want to make it hard on them. The hell with that. You learn, and you create standards for yourself because your parents make it harder on you.
Right.
And I don't mean you're out shoveling coal at midnight. But if you don't fail,
that's how muscles build, right?
Right, absolutely. I've never believed that you've got to lose to learn how to win. I've never believed that. But losing identifies pathways and lanes for you to figure it out to get to be a winner.
If you pay attention to your earlier point.
If you pay attention, it's what you notice.
This would be a good time to bring up. We were chatting before we started recording, but about that acronym and the whole leadership piece. Losing. There's a couple ways to lose. You can lose and get punched in the face and just keep doing it over and over again, or you can pay attention and adapt. And not everybody has the tools or the observational skills to do that.
Well, it's interesting. You don't. Again, in sport. And they still do a lot of it, especially in football, but you watch video. And I don't know if people appreciate how much time you watch as a group, and then you break it down, now you watch it on your tablet at home. And what you're doing is you're looking to your point a minute ago is, okay, how do we get better? How do we get better as a group? How do I get better as an individual player to make the people beside me and around me better? Because that's the goal. The goal isn't me to be better to be a star. It's me to become better, to raise the water level across the board. And I had a coach, God love him, Joe Farragelli, as an offensive coordinator at Edmonton. And, I was a couple years in the league before I got to Edmonton. And the perspective that he shared with me on how to break film down and watch it. You can watch video and film till the cows come home. But if you're not paying attention,
you know what to look for.
Yeah, and I've used this in as I said, when I've spoken to corporations about raising your level and how you get there. It's the WIN method, and it's you put that up and you let people. Well, of course, winnings, and everyone talks about winning. Of course, it's not about winning. It's not about winning. It's about getting better. And the WIN is an acronym to what I noticed. And what I noticed throughout the day, and if you adapt that, and what Joe Ferragelli taught me and the rest of us, is pay attention to what they're doing during a game based on what you've seen in video, identify that, and that will lead you to making a quicker and an easier decision, which ultimately is something as simple as picking up a blitz. I mean, everyone, well, of course you pick up blitz. Yeah, but if I know what's happening, or I'm pretty sure, I'm more effective in my position of what I'm doing.
Right.
So if we all think that way, and we all did think that way, and the next man up thought that way, our preparation is so much better than everybody else's. So that was something that I think is important in relationships. I think it's important in friendship, with your kids, with your friends, everything. Because honestly, it's a great compliment to someone if you get an opportunity to really pay attention to them when you give them feedback on, well, so how are things? And the next time, you talked about this. Oh, yeah, I didn't realize you were listening. Yeah, because I care about you. Caring about somebody is a wonderful thing. And that doesn't mean you sit and catch all day of someone's woes, but paying attention to the important things, whether it be family and friends, and it makes them stronger and makes you stronger. And there's a trust that comes with that. And that trust translates into strong team, either on the field or in business. And back to my comment, I have been blessed to be surrounded by people that just get it. Up to Brock. I mean, my staff at Brock was awesome. And in between, and everything in between that and the Tiger Cats, just first-rate human beings that were as passionate about things as I was and understood that it was going to be hard. So they didn't, the woe was me never popped up.
Right. There was none of that. I was there for a very brief period. I think it was like June and July of 1994. There was none of that in the office. And it was the first time I'd worked in an office. Like, I had nothing to compare it to. But looking back, having been in all these environments, it was like a very special time. But also, like, just, you felt like you were just like making the shit up day by day. And I remember one time, and I was so, as personally, I was so aggressive. Like, I was just trying to make a mark and change, So I remember one time I got a call from a guy, and he was like the local radio guy who became the mayor of the town later on. Was it Bob?
Well, Bob Hooper didn't come the mayor, but the voice of the Tiger Cats did.
Was Bertina or something?
Bob Bertina.
Was that who it is?
Yeah, he was.
So he called one day, and I'm like answering the phone, like I'm secretary, speechwriter, whatever. And so I answered the phone one day. He's like, "Hi, is John Michalik there?" And I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. I'm not from around here. And I'm like, I know he's not around. I give him some, like, I'm trying to be like the gatekeeper, and I guess he's like got super offended, and he called up John, who the bleep is this kid? And like, it's a kid, you gotta like take your foot off the gas a little bit, so like the little lessons like that, because you're just trying to like you're trying to be a tornado of effectiveness, but it doesn't always work that way. Jeez.
No, and you think of all the things, and I think of all the things that happened in there. I mean, I remember sitting in my office up front, and there were a couple of us, and Normie wasn't far, and the coaches was across, and Rob Agopian, there's another wonderful guy who was our accountant. We were late one night, and the boardroom was kind of behind me. If you had a jackhammer, you'd go through that and through a coach's office and into a boardroom. And they were having a board meeting, and there is screaming and yelling. And they a couple guys come flying down the hall, and Robbie and I look at each other and go, this is not going well. And we could hear what they were talking about. I won't share that with you.
Yeah.
But it was a volatile, driven by passion and reality, trying to find a way to create a lane. And we hit some speed bumps, but we did it.
So you personally, as a player, if I'm correct in this, 3 Grey Cups?
3 as a player.
In Edmonton.
Correct, and 1 as a GM.
Yeah, with Hamilton.
COO, yeah.
So when you look back on your days playing, and your son Jessie played also in the CFL, and then has gone on to become a famous bobsledder, probably the most famous bobsledder in Canada. When you look back on your career, what are the in this era of like with all the stuff going on with the concussions and all of this, like it's like the unspoken thing in a lot of like the NFL, the NHL, the CFL. Do you think there was no talk of this back in the day? It was like, oh, you got your bell rung and you get back in there, right? How many fingers? What day is it? What's your name? Right? And they'd send you back on the field.
Well, there's a funny joke. Mike Samples, who's a dear friend and played in the league for a long time, great player, defensive end, played here in Hamilton and played in Saskatchewan after that. And he jokes about the day that Roger Aldag, who was an all-pro center playing in Saskatchewan, and he wobbles off the field and the trainer comes up and grabs him, and the game was being played in Ottawa. And he sits him down. He says, "Okay, Roger, what's your name?" He says, "Oh, Roger Aldag." And he said, "Okay, what position do you play?" He says, "Well, I'm center." He said, "Well, what city are we in?" He said, we're in Toronto." He said, 2 out of 3. That's okay. You're fine to keep going.
The concussion protocol has changed.
Changed dramatically. And
jeez.
Yeah, we. It's funny. I was part of some research a couple of years ago here in Hamilton of ex-players and I went through a protocol, some testing, 2 separate days, about 5 hours a day, and it was very interesting. It's interesting because you never know what you don't not necessarily want to hear, but what I find is the biggest difference, and you talked about those days, and I like to think they weren't that long ago, but there was a trust factor.
Among players?
Well, no, among players and media.
Oh, okay.
That you could say something to someone,
and it wouldn't get. So there was a line.
There was a line, and there was a respect, and that's been long gone. And I think that more than anything has taken some of the fun out, because now there's a race to, no matter what someone says, to get out first, whether it's accurate or not.
Right.
And I think in those terms, I thought, really, is that how you run a business? You just. We just got to be first. We don't have to be right. Like, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And but that's okay now. And it's okay because the next piece of information comes along, and it's forgotten. And there are still some wonderful media people out there that you can trust, or that I can trust. But I think that takes some of the fun out of it.
It does.
Where you can, on the day I could sit back with Marty York, who was a guy at the Toronto Star who was known for spearing people. But I had a conversation with him, and I got in a situation when I was in Toronto, and I never heard a word about it, because I went up to him and said, "Hey, this is not good for either one of us. Are you okay with not?" And he said, "Yeah." I mean, it wasn't. I don't make it sound like it was a big deal.
No, but there was it was different rules of engagement back then. There was respect, professional respect. When you talk about being first, I always think of Damien Cox at the Toronto Star. He was, say what you will, and good guy, and you probably know him from primetime sports and stuff. But he was, and he probably regrets this hugely, but he was the guy who tweeted out that Pat Burns had died, and when he hadn't.
Yes.
And I think, and this is a number of years ago, but it's like the trying to be first, and it's hard to put that back in the bottle once it's. And I think Pat Burns kind of said something along the lines of, the reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Like, he kind of used that quote.
That was a W.C. Fields line, I think.
But I think he kind of regurgitated that line, and he had a couple more months in him, I guess. That was an interesting one because, a couple of friends and I were in the you remember when Pat Burns, he had that press conference, and he looked no one had seen him, and he looked just gaunt, just like skeletal. And, this is in 2010. In March. So one of my buddies, I'm in this hockey pool with a bunch of guys, and one of my friends sends over this clip to all of us. We had this little chat group or whatever. And I said, I'm writing some document, and I look at this, I'm like, holy shit, because I hadn't heard of Pat. I knew he wasn't doing it. He had cancer a couple times.
Right.
And then I see this, and I sent back a note, just, you reply to everybody. I said, somebody should see if they can get him in the Hall of Fame before he passes away. Send, and now it's like someone else's problem. And so my buddy, who has since passed away, says, he responds back to the group and says, "Well, you're Mr. Public Relations guy. What are you going to do about it?" And my first instinct is like, there's nothing, I can't do anything about it. Like, I'm just this one guy. And then I thought, well, wait, hang on. There's this new thing, Facebook. Like, and it's like 3 years old at this point. And it's like, it's not nothing close to what it is today. But started up this little group and put $20 of advertising behind it and targeted men between 18 and 65 who like beer and hockey or something like that. Like, this was not a sophisticated operation. And then we had like 6 followers. It was nothing at all. And then the next day, that was a Friday, the next day we emailed a bunch of people from Hockey Night in Canada, just like, firing emails off to every email address we could find. Didn't hear back from anybody. And so I watched the first game that night, and I'm hoping for something to be on TV so that we can get some like traction behind this group, right? And to make this happen, And the Leafs lost to somebody. I can't remember who it was, but the first game's over, and I turn off the TV, and I'm getting ready to go to bed, and my buddy BBMs me, and he says, "Holy shit, our thing is on Hockey Night in Canada." If you remember, Jeff Merrick had that sort of between the two games, and I turn on the TV, and there's this Facebook page on Hockey Night in Canada, and so I went over and I hit refresh, and it was like 1,200 people. And I hit refresh, and it was like 2,200 people. And I hit refresh, and it was like 3,000 people. And it went crazy. And so the media coverage
awesome.
and everything else. And then what ended up, we had 72,000 people in the course of a couple of weeks, $2 million or so of media coverage, like every outlet, New York Times, CBS, Yahoo Sports. And still, the dickheads didn't put him in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Like, my dad says, one thing you can't say about hockey people is that they're smart, right? And so I thought, you have this wonderful opportunity to do this thing. And I don't know Pat Burns. I don't know if you ever met him or knew him, but like...
Didn't know I met him, but I
have a sense. You have a sense of the guy. Like, you just get a sense of his morals and his code and the way he kind of lived his life. And I found it funny and sad and ironic that he literally... I think he passed away a couple days after the Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Right.
Like, they had the ceremony. He wasn't involved. What a... And then they let him in a couple years later. Like, it just boggles my mind. Boggles my mind. Completely wrong.
Well, I think it's a group of guys that probably says, don't tell us what to do.
You know what? You're exactly right.
And you just think, okay, so how about the right thing?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do the right thing. That's amazing. I joke about it because I'm a relatively private guy, and there's not a lot of information out there.
Today.
Right? Yeah, right. Oh, you think? But it's my joke is, look, I'll tell you when I'm dead. Until then, I'm fine. So you're not going to know anyways. It's too bad because that whole.
Can you imagine what that would have been? Like that would have been just amazing.
Yeah.
And he would have gotten to experience it. And so,
yes,
in some way, I hope that our little campaign didn't kind of, screw things up or throw a monkey wrench into it.
But there was nothing happening beforehand.
We don't. So who knows, right? Who knows?
Well, but again, probably not.
Yeah. Anyway, it's would have been amazing. So sorry, I wanted to ask again about like those the glory days or whatever of playing. What else was there in those days that is kind of gone today that you kind of missed? Because like there's the commoditization of everything and the social media and just like influencer life, and it just seems there's so much stuff coming at us. Like, what is there anything you're wistful of, or like what are some of the memories that you have? Like what or just in general, what do you take from that time that you kind of wish we could kind of replicate today?
Well, some of it was organic. Some of the things that we did were. For the most part, okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were big-time practical jokers. We did things that, either individually or as a group that, again, would have probably been poo-pooed these days. Oh, you know what those guys did? They did, oh, how dare they do? Yeah, okay. Well,
can you give me an example of one practical joke, safe for publication?
Sure. Yeah, one day in practice, myself and Dave Cutler and Angelo Santucci were really the front of the wedge on these sorts of things. I mean, I love practical jokes.
Really?
As long as no one gets killed and we don't damage anybody's property, we're doing okay.
They get hurt, not killed.
I just winged a bit, but nothing major.
Yeah.
We Emilio Ferreira, wonderful guy, defensive back. He was sort of the 6th or 7th guy. Loved his car. Bought an MG, loved it. And we would, I don't think they still do, but we had training camp just down the road from Commonwealth Stadium at Concordia College. And it was great because veterans, and it's funny, we talked about this the other day, that veterans could go home at night where rookies had to stay in camp. So we're 2-day practices, and it was back in the day when we were going 2 weeks at a time, 2 days breaks, was real training camp, not what it is now. It's still real, but it's much more controlled and contact and take out, but mostly good stuff, right? So we set it up that if you can envision this football field, that one end zone faced the main street, the college is behind it, and then to get in, you would drive down parallel to the side of the field, and it was all fenced in.
Yeah.
So we had it set up that we had a tow truck come in, and we knew the driver, and it was all completely orchestrated, and we're in warm up. And the tow truck, you don't think anything but a tow truck coming in. He goes in, we had him hook up his MG, and And then when he was leaving, we made sure that we were in warm-up, and he was to drive very slowly down the side of the field on that road,
so that he could
out
see
to the main
it.
street, then take off and go, right? And we told him just take it back to the parking lot of Como Stadium, which was a mile down the street. So sure enough, we're all watching this happen, those of us that know what was going on. And he hooks us up, and we say, hey, Emilio, Jesus, something wrong with your car, man? No, why? Well, look at that. Well, he takes off. He was real quick. He goes sprinting down the field. It couldn't have been timed more perfectly where the tow truck gets to the main street, makes the left, where Emilio is just jumping the fence to try to stop the guy, never catches the guy.
Jeez.
So,
and what are you guys dying laughing? Or
yes. And of course, the head coach knows about this, as we always let the head coach know about most of the stuff.
Right.
But today that might be seen as, oh, look at those guys jacking around. They're not taking their craft seriously. How can they be so loosey-goosey? And, they're not respecting their craft. You'd hear things like that where there could be nothing further from the truth.
Well, your bond, team building.
Well, we understood when we had to get to work. We understood that we could do certain things, again, with the okay through our leadership group, which was the head coach, who was just a spectacular guy, but it kept things light. And it's good to keep people on edge a little bit, even if it's their brand new MG.
So did he get back at you guys? Like, what did he do?
No, because you got to remember, you can either accept it or get back at us, and if you get back
You're
at
gonna
us,
get it back
it's going to get
worse.
worse.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it comes back tenfold.
And he knew that.
Oh yeah, so we all have a laugh about it. The car wasn't damaged. We told him, hey, relax, it's okay. It's just down the Como Stadium parking lot. One of us will not drive you down. You get down on your own.
Jeez.
Walk down after dinner, right? I mean, that's a pretty easy going prank.
Yeah.
But in today's world, I'm sure there'd
so
be
easily
criticism.
offended,
Well, there'd be criticism coming near and far from people that probably don't know whether a football's pumped or stuffed, but feel they have a right to say something because they have that vehicle to do it. And there are so many negative people out there. It's incredible, just because they have a chance to be heard. And I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the new. Everyone's so offended by everything and wants to chime in with their opinion. And the new thing is, like, if somebody says something that people find offensive, they want to not only voice their opinion, they want to eliminate that person's ability to even earn a living. And it's a cancel culture. Like, it's pretty huge, which is crazy. Like, you just wouldn't have seen that 20 years ago.
No, you wouldn't. And
I wonder if we're just, with the social media, it's almost like, I don't think we've caught up mentally with the tools that we have. Like, the ability for you to pick up your phone and be able to publish to the world is not necessarily always a good thing.
No. Well, and I think that I read, not a report, but a paper on cell phones, and this woman in the States, she was a psychologist, and she used her daughter as an example coming through high school. I mean, number one, and sorry, everybody out there, but anybody who buys their kids an iPhone at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, you're out of your mind, number one, and you're creating a problem. And the problem is, as this report stated, is their daughter in high school got pretty good grades, but she was on her phone a fair bit, and they monitored her time and what she could access. Yeah. But it was there, and I joke about, well, you can text on a flip phone. You don't need to have access to all this sort of stuff. And she said it really didn't pose much of a problem until she got to university, the daughter. And then they found in the first year, because she was living at home, that their daughter had this phone beside her all the time. And when it came to exams in first year, when there's a lot of pressure on these young people anyways, they'd go off to study, the phone would be beside them. Let's say they plan to study for 3 or 4 hours for psych. One beep, you're distracted. And now you've responded, and now you're expecting another response. Yeah. So your ability to, in let's say in the sport terms, it's like warming up for a competition and then sitting down for a half an hour. And now you got to rewarm yourself. Well, mentally, they haven't got the capacity to dial right back into and focus on what they're doing. So she estimated the 4 hours of time that her daughter would spend that one particular time with that distraction beside her, out of the 4 hours was maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and not confident of the retention factor because of the distractions.
Yeah.
So you see them get in these lines at university to go write exams, and you walk out and you can smell in the hallways the fear. And I kid you not. And a lot of kids are prepared. Now, this isn't everybody, and I'm not painting I'm not painting a broad brush here. But if you prepare that way, you're going to get caught. And that's where this device hurts you. Instead of saying, no, put it in your drawer. The FOMO, fear of missing out, it's huge. I mean, I'm not a good example because I don't care. I mean, I don't care what's going on out there. I care about my friends and my family and I'll get the other news.
Right.
But you know.
You don't need to know what Donald Trump said 5 minutes ago.
I don't need to know because I know it would be stupid. But, for that matter, I'm not that worried about the world because I will get that information. But to think that I have to know right away puts a lot of pressure on me. And I don't want that pressure because there's enough pressure in our world as it is, in our jobs, and making sure our families and our friends are okay.
Well, everybody's mind is so busy, right?
Yeah.
And I heard something a couple weeks ago on a podcast where someone said, if you're constantly in this busy state, when are you doing your thinking? Like, when are you actually having time for thought? Mm-hmm. You're always going down the list and kind of dealing with things, and it is a sort of franticness that you walk around and you can see, and I'm certainly guilty of a lot. So
we all get pulled into it. I mean, as did I in certain ways. But I would never take my phone and put it beside my bed.
No, I was, when I interview someone, I check out what they're doing on Twitter. I want to see, what's going on in their life and what's happened. And I noticed that one of the trends or patterns that you have is you always retweet the Amber Alert stuff. You're big in the Amber Alerts. Mm-hmm. What is there a reason, you have this tough football guy sending out, because there's been a lot of controversy about it, even last week. There was one in the middle of the night and everybody's calling 911 and pissing and moaning. What is it about that? Because you don't tweet it a lot.
No.
You'll tweet out some stuff about your kids and certain news things.
When I was at Brock, tweeting with the successes.
But Amber Alerts is there's a ton of them on there. So what is it about that?
I think it's more of just it's an awareness.
To share the.
Well, if my kids were missing, I'd want people to know because I'd want them just to think for that 1 second to when they see somebody, maybe that's that person. Yeah. This is a situation where more eyes, the better.
Right.
And for me, that's important because I don't, I can't even imagine what I would be like if one of my kids or their kids or friends was missing. And
I think about these people calling 911 and complaining about it. Just what?
Oh, of course they are. I mean, of course they are. Those are the same people that probably call up a 911 when they've sprained their ankle instead of getting their butt in their car and driving to Emerge. Yeah. And probably then they didn't have to do that. Save it and go to the clinic the next day and let the emergency deal with real emergencies. There's so much of that now too that clogs the process. The lanes are jammed in certain things, and those that need it. Those need help can't get there.
The snowflakes.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. It's that we have to be a little less soft in our life and not let things affect us as much. We have to go back to being a little bit tougher and not be influenced as easily as, did you so what? So what? Somebody said something. Big deal.
Do you think political correctness has gone too far in a way?
In a Ferrari and it's flying by.
Really? And people aren't, I saw a comedy special the other day and someone, I think it was Aziz Ansari, and he said, could you imagine if we had a draft with today's people? Can you imagine? It's just and maybe that's the thing, if you think of that, the old generation, it was the World Wars and it was the Depression and this is stuff that hardens you. And not that it's anybody's fault or not, but there's, people aren't tested a lot. We have everything. We have every convenience.
It comes back to the kids thing.
Yeah.
The kids, you don't let your kids fail. You protect them. And when you see it happening in university sport and the parents get involved, and it's not my kid's fault.
Right.
Well, why don't you back away and let the coach do it and let them deal with it and let them strengthen the character of your son or your daughter. It's okay. It really is okay. And I see stories on TV about people that have, gone through great turmoil as a child and didn't have a great upbringing and bad parents or split parents, all that sort of thing. And I think, Jesus, I was lucky. My parents were awesome. I had a great childhood.
Yeah.
They supported me in everything I did. They never missed games, mom and dad, and we did the same with our kids. But I'll tell you, if it's funny the things you remember in life, and one of them is my dad coached us in hockey when I was a kid, and we were in a championship game. And my neighbor, Dave Wilson, and I were the better players in this hockey team. And we would have 4 lines, and we cycled the 4 lines. And we were behind, and I was saying, God, put me on. Come on. Dad, let's go. Nope. Everyone has a right to play, and everyone's going to play. Okay? Now, I was pissed at the time, but I think back, and I thought back many years ago on this, as I have in other things, and he was right. This wasn't rep hockey. This is house league hockey at the time. Everyone does deserve the right to be that person to score the goal or to get their shift, and that's important. You can't.
There's less of that today. Like a lot of times today, they put that line. They'll double shift that line. They'll get that win, and there are parents out there with stopwatches timing how much every kid, and they're emailing the coaches later. And it's like
it's bizarre.
It's crazy.
I knock on wood, and I was, again, blessed. I coached hockey in Burlington, the Burlington Eagles, great organization. I've coached minor football in Burlington with Stampeders. I've done a lot of coaching, and I'll tell you, and maybe it was because of the approach and the start of the season, but I can't think of one parent that challenged myself or our coaches. And maybe it was because we set the standard earlier at the parent meeting and saying, look, you need to understand this. You need to understand what the opportunity really is here for your son. Maybe a scholarship to the States or in Canada. Wouldn't that be great? Don't think about pro.
Yeah.
Those athletes will find their way, or these days they will be found. Trust me.
Be found on Instagram or something.
They are found.
Yeah.
So just keep a good perspective on things, and be there be them to help your kids to get back up, but let them understand that it isn't easy, because it's not. I mean, before we got on there, you told me about what you went through and how hard you had to grind. Well, it's good to grind.
It's great.
It is good to grind.
That's the only way, really.
Yeah, and people have to understand that. And there are lots out there that have done it and are still doing it. I don't mean to sound like we have a bunch of soft people out there. But
there's a sense of entitlement that you should be able to just choose what you want to be and be amazing at it in 30 days. And it's perpetuated on social media. Or people will see you where you are today, but they don't see the struggle of the last 20 years or whatever underneath that. Which I have to say, personally looking back, that was the best part, right? When you finally achieve the thing you wanted, you're like, it's kind of a letdown, and you need another challenge, because it's the struggle. It sounds so cliche, but it's the struggle that's the thing. That's the joy, is the working towards it's the process.
Well, it makes you who you are ultimately, because you learn how to deal with stuff, all sorts of stuff,
and it transfers into your personal life, and learning how to deal with adversity in a professional capacity can help you. Certainly when I went through a divorce a number of years ago, leaned heavily on that part of my kind of muscle memory from work, and helped me get through that in a huge way. So it's like a transferable skill that I think, I was playing foosball with my kids a couple of weeks ago, and me and my girlfriend and my 2 kids were on the other side, and I was trying really hard to beat them, and balls were flying off the table, and later she said, you don't let them win. I said, hell no. And it didn't even occur to me maybe I should let them win sometimes. But and now, because we play quite a bit, they're great little players, because I don't want to just hand them these little victories, you won the game. I'm going to town on them, and hopefully it makes them better people, or maybe it'll scar them irreparably. Who knows?
No, I don't think so. I think those are the little things, and it's funny. Lessons don't have to be big lessons; they can be little ones. They don't have to be heroic gestures or Herculean efforts. They're small things that can build character too. We can't forget about that, and in some cases, those become the most important and impactful. The others are all good. I relate it to if you are going to play sport. Really watching video didn't come into my life until really university, but you learn very quickly that none of it's personal, and that when a coach is crawling up my keister about something, if I take it personally, I'm never going to, number one, it's wrong. It's about my performance. In professional, your livelihood is a day-to-day thing. Because you get videoed at practice, then you're certainly videoed in game. You're examined 5 days a week out of the 7. And everything you do is scrutinized. And they get on you. And again, if you take that kind of, it's not a criticism. So, and I say, look, I'm not being critical of you. I think you're a great person. I'm correcting you. And this is not how we do it. A correction is not criticism. It's just not. But if you think it is because someone's raised their voice and telling you you've done something wrong, you got a problem. So that's what sport does for people that every day they get off the field, they go watch practice. And there's 2 cuts of it. There's an end cut, which they show from the end zone in practice, and a side cut. You can't do anything without people seeing it. And if you keep making the wrong read on a coverage as a receiver, you're not going to play. It's that simple. You're going to sit, or you won't be the starting guy, the number 3 receiver in the formation next practice, because you're not getting it.
Right.
So figure it out and watch more video yourself. Now, it's not being critical of someone, that's observing and being constructive to help you keep your job, to make you better. But most people look at it as criticism, and it's unfortunate. And that's one of the biggest things.
There's a reflex to blame outward, right? Did you see the thing on, I guess maybe you didn't, but there was a thread online that was just, I was laughing so hard. But it was, a woman is in an office and she overhears a meeting in a boardroom. There's a boss and a sort of 20-something worker. I won't say the M word, but they're in the room, and the younger person had spelled the word hamster. Have you seen this thing?
No.
But she spelled the word hamster with a P in it, like HAMPSTER, hamster.
Hamster.
And then her boss is, while explaining to her very calmly, like, there's no P in hamster. And she's like, but that's how I spell it. Like, I spell it with a P. And so then the boss is very patient with her, but you have to understand that, like, that's not actually how there is a spelling that's correct, and that's not how it's spelled. But I spell it. And so then the boss leaves, and she calls her mother on speakerphone, and it's like, I can't believe it. And the mother's like, oh, you tell them to go to hell. And that's just an example of what you're talking about. So I think if you look at anybody who's successful, from Steve Jobs to some athlete, it's the self-awareness and the building piece, and not taking it personally, and being able to kind of just build and
don't be offended on everything because someone. It's a frustrating thing. I see it a little bit in athletes too, because coaching.
Yeah. Can you coach that out of people? Some people, I guess.
Yeah, it's all based on your approach. Yes, you can.
I guess different people respond to different techniques, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You don't treat everyone the same. You don't coach everyone the same on one-on-one. You certainly do as a group. But you need to. What's what you notice? And how you see an athlete, he or she, respond to certain things. Because we're not all the same. There is a time for you to respond as a unit the same. But when you're coaching somebody up about a correction, I mean, there's some people you can't yell at, and then that isn't not just now. That's 20, 30 years ago. You just can't do it, because maybe when they grow up, one of their parents was yelling at them. And I don't know.
That just turns them off.
The switch goes, and you're never going to get through. And when you don't get through, you're not giving that person the opportunity to get untapped and really be really good at what they want.
So maybe like a quiet word or a question or something. Maybe there's a different approach to get through.
Quiet word, question, have fun with it. Remind them that it's something you can't continue to do. You have to find a way to recognize it and fix it, and do it and you don't do it by barking. Where some people respond great to barking because they're used to it.
Right.
And it doesn't bother them.
Married people.
Married people. Which one of the people are you talking about?
Both of them. I don't know. So I used to listen to you. You were on Primetime Sports quite often as what would they call it? Like a guest, or you'd be one of the
as a roundtable guys.
Yeah.
They changed that when they went to just all Rogers employees.
So great though.
Was awesome.
I spent a lot of my life in traffic commuting, and that was like just. Fantastic. And you learn so much about sports, and you'd be talking to people in conversations like, where the hell did you hear that? You probably saw that Bob McCown's left the show recently. My read on it is that he had a multi-year contract. He's not there. I don't know if it was his choice or not. I'm guessing because it's Rodgers. It wasn't. It seems to be on brand for Rodgers, just getting rid of talent and cutting costs. I'd love to see that guy start up a podcast. You know what I mean? I think I'd listen to that.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I think he is. I like him. I haven't seen him in a long time. I probably won't listen to that segment anymore because he's not on
I'll never listen to it. Yeah.
His perspectives and range of knowledge is, I think, pretty unique, and it's something he's acquired by paying attention and learning some things. And he doesn't have to drill down on everything, but even if he hasn't drilled down on it, he has that innate ability to, what he does know, bring something out and put it on the table that will tweak somebody to get him fired up. He really is
it's a master,
a special guy when it comes to that, and very generous. He's a wonderful guy. Again, I haven't seen him in years, and I really enjoyed being in that forum with him because he's smart. He knows what he's doing, and if he doesn't show up somewhere, I don't know why, and I'm not going to speculate. I don't think it's a great move. Rodgers makes their decisions based on a number of things, so I'm not going to be critical of them. But we've lost a really great presence on the airways, and from my perspective, again, I don't know what I'll go back to TSN 1150 and listen to the guys locally.
I was watching the comments online, and a lot of people were echoing that. I'm not going to listen to The Fan anymore, or that was the reason I listened to it, or that was the only thing I listened to. And, I wonder, he doesn't seem like a super technologically savvy guy. I don't know, does he have the wherewithal to start something up on his own? Will he just go to another show? I think the move, instead of even going to another station, is just start up your own. If he started up a podcast, he would have hundreds of thousands of listeners within a week. And monetize that with a couple sponsors. You don't need the middleman anymore. I don't think you do. Especially, he's got the brand established. It's
crazy.
Done. It's done, delivered. Yeah. I'm hoping that happens and he pops up doing something.
Well, and the other thing is, the people that worked with him won't be as good.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Because there's a different. And
it's a different
I'm
personality.
not being critical of Jeff and the guys around there now. I know Jeff a little, but I don't know the other guy. But there's a reason you listen and you tune in, and I think what he was able to do, not only with the in-studio guests. I think they made a mistake by just going to Rodgers people years ago.
Yeah.
Gord Kirk, myself, there's other guys, and I'm whooping myself in that because it makes me sound terribly selfish.
There was a big mix of people. You had Peter King and all these guys from all over the place.
Crazy. And
you never knew who was going to be there.
And occasionally when John Shannon, who's one of the smartest guys in sports, without doubt, and has a recall that is staggering. And I worked with him in football and television for a bunch of years, and I've occasionally texted him when he's on the air about something, saying, "Come on, man, don't be,"
Really?
And he'll get back to me
in the middle of the interview.
Oh, sure.
Jeez.
Yeah, because I know I watched them
on their phone. You could see
when I was on when they're on TV. I'd watch, and when they go to break, I can see them pick up their phone. Right.
That's great.
Yeah, there's some really talented.
Stephen Brunt, and then Damien Cox, as referred to earlier. These are all these personalities.
Yeah, Brunt is. I don't.
Great.
Where is Damien? I haven't heard Damien on the air.
I don't know.
I hear Stephen every once in a while.
I don't know.
And Brunt's brilliant. To me, he's one of the.
He's great. Great writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully he pops up somewhere.
He will.
One of the, before we started recording, we were talking about the fact that you were on The Amazing Race in 2015 with your daughter, Kristen.
Right.
I read sort of a synopsis of it, and it said that you might take offense to this, but that you were the oldest participant by far. I think it was like.
Oh, it was.
So and it was. Do you think?
I don't take offense to that.
This is not for the faint of heart. This is a grueling competition. Do you think that the football sort of training and just the sort of conditioning and the mindset and everything played a role in the success you guys had on that?
Oh, there's no question. I look at that, and I don't take offense to that. There were 12 teams that year, and we were 6th. We got bumped, so we beat a bunch of young people.
Yeah.
What always made me feel good, and this is my own character, and I really. I understood it more when I got to Edmonton when we'd play in terrible, terrible weather, really cold. And the more I see you as an opponent cringe and be affected by the environment, the stronger I feel,
right.
and the more I smile, because then I got you.
The mental toughness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, and I applied that, or tried to as much as I could within boundaries in this situation, to see when I saw the young guys struggle and say it, like, I'm dying here. I'd go, thank God, because I'm dying too. And if the young guys are dying, that means it is hard. Right. And I'm not the old guy that's suffering.
What were some of the more grueling things they had you do?
Well, what you don't, it's the production group is who are great. Really, a team of two is a team of four. We're connected with on every leg a different sound guy and a camera guy. Yeah. And those cameras aren't the little little cam. They're big, significant cameras.
Like documentary style.
Yeah, and those guys are studs, guys and gals.
Because you don't even think of them. No,
and it shows you how good they are. You never see them either.
That's right.
And that's how good the editing and the production is, because they are.
The fact that you don't think about them means they're doing their job well.
Absolutely. I think that a lot, what you don't, it's 48 minutes of television. It's developed through, who's struggling, who's going to come first, and who's going to come last. We had there were a lot of things that you don't see. And we had actually my wife Donna and set up a viewing party on one of the shows at the CFL Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Yeah. Thanks to Mark Noble, who's a great buddy of mine, and he allowed that. And we did one in Toronto too with Kristen's friends. And then we had an open forum, and the people asked questions. And there's so much you don't see, and there are so many things that I was proud of that didn't get on, which really, frankly, pissed me off, but that's the way it goes. And one of the best was when I think we were in Chile, and we had to go show up in this soccer environment. There's got to be 4 or 5 fields, and it's right in the middle of downtown. Right. It's almost like it's a ring road around it. It was very noisy. And you had to be, and one of the teammates had to be blindfolded, where the other teammate had to stand on the goal line and bark out instructions. So you had to take the ball, you had to weave through, go through some obstacles, come around. It's probably a 50 or 60 yard course, right. Stop, and then kick the ball in the net. And you had to do it in 60 seconds. So I did it the first 2 times, was okay at it, but I couldn't hear her. So Kristen said to me, let's switch, Dad. You bark out, because use your coach's voice.
How many shots do you get at this?
Well, you keep going until you get it under 60 seconds.
Oh, really?
So I said to her after the first time she did it, I said, okay, let's do something different, Chris. No matter how you are standing, so I can relate you can get related to the ball, I'm going to put you on the clock. So 12 o'clock isn't always straight up. 12 o'clock's based on where you're facing. Right. So if I'm saying 10 o'clock.
It's based on where you're facing.
That's right. So I was calling numbers out. Smart. And the rest of the teams couldn't figure out what we're doing. And she was brilliant. And it took her 2 times, came around under a minute and did it. Wow. We went on, we were out of there first. She was, again, just awesome. And we ended up winning that leg. Yeah. What I found out later was they extended the time frame from 1 minute to 2 minutes.
For everybody else.
Because no one else could get it. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute here.
Shouldn't you reward the team that got it?
Right, and we had a good lead, but if we hadn't, and the soccer guy and his partner from Montreal left and took a penalty, 2-hour penalty. He couldn't get it. It was really hard, and I'm not making light of it. It was a really difficult thing, but we had a plan. And that's the way the plan worked. And we did something else on the taste test. Those sorts of things that people don't know about, that I beam about when I talk about Kristen, because
sort of thing.
Yeah, it's smart, and when you can execute a plan with your daughter, it's awesome.
So, and you'd mentioned again before we started taping that had had a positive impact on, like, you guys had a great relationship, but it was like that's got to forge it even stronger.
Well, you're picked up. It's quite a process to get picked, and then they give you a countdown, and then they pick you up at your house, and they pick Kristen up in Toronto, and then we're taken to a hotel at the airport.
Like, it's go time immediately?
No, and they pull up, and they don't let you out, and then they escort you to a room, and they dump your bag out and make sure you have anything that may be of help. They take the TV out of your room. They take the phone out of your room. There's
Really?
no radios. And we are together for the next, I think it was 27 days.
Wow.
Other than me walking into the washroom, and vice versa. We are
all the
together.
teams,
and your mic.
same thing.
Same thing. So
Wow.
when we were sequestered in those 5 days, where we had an hour and a half to train, where we were taken out of your room, taken down to the gym, or there were production meetings and those sorts of things. You couldn't talk to teams and anything. And that was all part of the, breakfast in the morning, every other meal was in your room. So there's a tempting of it, and we were laughing about it because I said, this is all about getting people freaky here. That's what this was about, right?
Yeah.
And then they say, and the next, okay, as of noon, we're out of here, we're flying you to your destination, you're gonna be picked up, and that's when you're on your way.
And you don't know where you're going?
No, and for us, we were going to Quebec City.
Oh, yeah.
It's about creating pressure as much as they can, and what you don't see is you could be at a specific challenge for hours. But you don't. The way they edit it, they try to, they're keeping it closer, but in some cases, I heard the story of Hal and Joanne, the fitness guys.
Yeah. Participation or whatever.
Yes, they're in the first year.
They're not a couple, are they?
I think they are a couple.
Really?
Yeah, they're great people.
Yeah.
Great people. And they told the story about Hal and Joanne in Halifax, and they were, I can't remember the specific challenge they were at, but they both had to do it. They were there for 5 hours.
And they're
5
like
hours.
pros at this.
Yeah, well, you think you're pros.
You think, yeah.
Well, the two the gals from the national team,
Yeah.
what do you think the one thing that they should be best at when it comes to a challenge? Maybe shooting pucks or
Yeah.
something? They struggled. I mean, at TSN, we had to read a teleprompter, and I struggled with it because all my television I've done has never been reading a prompter.
Yeah.
And then you do it right, and then you turn to the wrong camera, and Dutchie was
There's an art to that. Yeah.
Oh, there's a real art to it.
Yeah.
So it's a great test, physically and mentally.
What made you do it? Like, whose idea was it?
It was Kristen. She signed up for the very first year. Her and her buddy Shannon, great friend, and because we went through it, she knew how far she had gotten the first time, and she got pretty close to sort of that next level, and then they didn't make it. The second year, they both went back and they didn't even get it.
Yeah.
And she had said to me going into the second year, she said, Dad, hey, will you do it with me if Shannon and I don't go in year two? And I said, oh, are you kidding me? Absolutely. So we did, and we went through the process and did our video and sent it
great.
in. And I figured it would help a bit because of my background.
For sure. Well, it's good TV. It's interesting.
Yeah,
right?
and it was.
So she had a good instinct there to kind of plug you in or whatever.
And I was
That's
happy
great.
to do it because
That's great.
it was, I did it for myself, but I did it for her.
So you mentioned the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, which is I think across the street from here. It's not far away.
Well, they've moved it. Mark's, they still have their offices right beside City Hall in the bottom, but it's more at Tim Hortons Field.
Oh, okay.
The bus and everything at Tim Hortons
But you're
Field.
in there. You're in there now as of 2014.
Correct.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I saw your kids on Father's Day had a picture of themselves with that
With the
head.
bus?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's neat. It was, we did it. They did that year in Montreal. Friends, family, my old coach Johnny Gilbert, who I love to death, came up from Buffalo. I had a bunch of old teammates come. Like it really was.
That's got to be an amazing
special.
experience.
Oh, it was crazy. The fun part is and the things you remember that we're going to say something, right? We have a speech of sorts.
Yeah.
And it was in a Cirque du Soleil, and the whole event was spectacular. So what we didn't realize, all of us, because we all kind of looked at each other at one point, went, holy crap. We were in the round, so there was no podium. So everyone who had written something out.
Nowhere to put it.
So for me, I've gone over it so much, I've got it in my head for the most part, and I typically speak like that in Arizona with bullet points. So I just handed it to one of my kids and said, here, rip that up, will you? I'm not going to need this. And we all going up there, and it's a deer in the headlights, but it was a lot of fun.
That sounds great.
It was really good.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And that's the moment that they kind of robbed Pat Burns and his family of, which kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was funny that during that whole Facebook process over the course of a couple of months. So he didn't end up getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame, but his son Jason actually reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I understand you're the guys who started this thing." So yeah, hopefully it's you guys are okay with it. And so apparently his because again pretty low profile, but Pat Burns was apparently in Florida at that time, just his family was hunkered down there and just kind of like waiting to die, basically,
Right.
because he'd said I'm not taking any treatment. And what was really cool about it is that, a lot of people would hit the little thumbs up and like it, but there were literally tens of thousands of stories and comments where people would go on and tell their favorite stories of Pat Burns or their favorite memories. And so he said, like, we sit around as a family, just read those all day.
Isn't that great? I mean, talk about an impact for family.
Yeah.
That's huge, especially when you've lost somebody that you care about. I mean, I can tell. It makes a difference.
It's great. So the other thing that I saw, and, again, completely switching topics, was you sold a motorcycle recently, a Harley Davidson. I think, was that on Twitter?
Sold. I was trying to sell it. I've got.
Oh, you still have it?
I've been riding since I was 17, much to the dismay of my dad. Dad just maybe in the only couple weeks in our life that he just
Didn't talk?
He was so angry with me.
Well, it's not the safest thing to ride.
No, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And then I kept riding, stopped riding it when I was playing. For the 10 years I was playing, I rode at university, and then right after I got another. So I just bought a semi-new, in 2009 Street Glide Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
I have Heritage Softail 2000 that I'm going to sell, that's in the garage. And then I've also got a rebuild 71 Sportster.
So you're a collector.
Well, I'm trying not to collect. It's turning into being a collector.
Yeah.
I just ride the Street Glide right now, but I got a couple things to do on the, I've got to get to it. I've had time, but I've just...
Do you know, are you good with that wrench? Do you know what you're doing?
A little bit. I've tried, but the older engines, the old Harley engines, actually, whether it's Honda or a Bonneville, 650 Bonneville was my first bike, and I could tune that myself with carburetor.
Really?
It's all fuel injection now. So, I could play with it a little bit, but I need to, there are guys that are good at it, so I probably will put it in the hands of
professionals.
And then Kristen loves the bike, my daughter. Jesse's
Does she
rode for a
ride?
while too. No, I won't let her. No.
So she just loves the idea of it.
Loves the idea of it. She says, well, that's my bike, right, Dad? Because Jess out west, my son, had a bike for the longest time, and he hasn't been riding it in years.
Yeah.
And I think he's sold his. So.
He looks so much like you.
That's what I've heard.
Oh, yeah. It's like a clone.
Crazy. Yeah, well, I think the fur on the face is one thing.
But it's just the face that it's on also. Yeah.
Well, I know that his little girl, Florence, who was just a doll, just turned 2 in May.
I didn't know your grandfather already.
It's great. It is great. She is... Jessie and Helen have done just a terrific job with Florence. But thank goodness for being able to link online and see her.
Yeah, for sure.
And when she can, and I think because Jess and I look similar, when she sees me, she lights up and she calls me Papa. And there's a connection. And I think it makes it easier for her. But she's just a doll.
That's so cute.
It's great.
Man.
It's
What's
great.
Jesse up to these days? Is he still doing the bobsled?
No,
thing?
he retired right after the Olympics.
Yeah.
His body is now down to what I call a male model, from 232 and to maybe 212.
Yeah.
Resource Merchant Capital is the company he's been with for a long time. Does well there, loves it. Still, he's outdoor guy, hunts and fishes.
Yeah.
Has been involved in a bunch of different things. I think he was chosen to be on the athlete council for the COC after he retired. And Helen does a lot of TV. She's so good at it for bobsleigh. But they're expecting their second now too. So
nice. You have grandchildren all over the place.
And Kristen's due in less than a month.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
That's great.
It's all great.
What's going on for the rest of the summer? What else are you up to?
I don't know. I'm still going to look to see. I'm not ready to retire, so to speak. The weather's been great. I've done more riding. I'm going to try to play a little bit more golf. But I've just got, to use the analogy, I've got more gas in my tank that I want to burn. I'm just not sure how I'm going to do it yet. But things are good. I've always looked at it this way, Warren. If my kids are good, I'm fine. That's the only thing that's important.
That's great, family. All right, why don't we wrap this thing up? Thank you very much for being here.
This has been great.
It's such a blast from the past to have you here. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon.
Anytime. This has been great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Neil Lumsden for making the time to be on the podcast. And as always, thank you very much to you for listening. Please take a few seconds to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, or to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It'll help other people find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you next time.